God, as you be your eyes, be your mouthpiece. God, again, we thank you for all of our fathers. We thank you for the beautiful illustration that you give us for our Heavenly Father. We love you. In my prayer. Amen.
How do you measure the real power of a man? Is it Mr. Universe and who can lift the most? Maybe it's Mr. Billionaire and who has the most. Or maybe it's Mr. Hollywood who has the most people who know his name. Perhaps it's Mr. President, Mr. CEO who has the most people who do whatever he says. Shebna thought he was all that. He thought he was powerful. He thought he was the man. Hot stuff. All that, bag of chips. Who was Shebna, you might ask? Shebna is not the fourth stooge, brother of Mo and Curly. That's Shem. I'm talking about Shebna, and he is in Isaiah chapter 22. Shebna lived in 700 BC in Jerusalem. He was the prime minister. He was in charge of the king's house. And the second most powerful man in Israel. He was an outsider, however, who used his position to line his pockets and to deck out his home and his pool, to trick out his cars. And now he was at the top of his game, and he decided to immortalize himself by building a glorious Pharaoh-like tomb inside the city of Jerusalem. The only problem is only kings were buried inside the city. But he decided, although he was not dying, he decided he wanted to be remembered after he was gone. So he began to build his legacy by building an ornate tomb. And that's when Isaiah walks up and tells us how to measure the power of a real man. Join me in Isaiah chapter 22, beginning in verse 15. A man you've probably never heard of before, Shebna. But God knows. God tells Isaiah in Isaiah 22:15, the Lord all-powerful, I'm the all-powerful one, is sending you with this message for Shebna. Shebna means promise, and I suppose at one time he might have showed some promise, but now it's all been about him. He says, Shebna, literally that prime minister, that guy, very derogatory, contemptuous way of speaking to him, the man over my house is dads are supposed to be over their house. He's over the house of Israel, but not in a good way. Here's what you should say. Shebna, what gives you the right to have a tomb carved out of the rock in this burial place of royalty? None of your relatives are buried here. Actually, in the Hebrew, 3 times he says here, what are you doing here? Why are you building a tomb here? None of your ancestors were buried here. What do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? This confrontation of Shebna is unusual in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah only confronts cities and nations. The only individual he confronts is this foreigner, this collaborator, this political crony, a self-important, haughty, ambitious, arrogant man. And he says, on behalf of God, just who do you think you are? We have discovered this very tomb that he was beginning to create for himself. In 1879, this tomb was discovered, and it was dedicated to, and then the name was blanked out. And for about 100 years, nobody knew whose tomb it was. But in 1953, a biblical scholar figured out, hey, this is probably Shebna's tomb. And although he says it's for remembering him, he didn't get to be buried here. And actually, in 2007, we discovered that is true because we found, even though the name is rubbed out, there is a special signet sign on it. When in 2007 they discovered an actual document signed by Shebna, the prime minister at that time, it matched. And so we've discovered his tomb, but surprise, surprise, it's empty. He didn't get to be buried there. His name was erased, just like God said it would be. Join me in verse 17. God says, you may be powerful, or you may think you are, but the Lord is about to snatch you up. And get this very graphic imagery. He's going to snatch you up and throw you away. He will roll you into a ball and throw you into a wide country. Imagine God bowling with Shebna out into the wide open country where you will die, and the chariots, all those cars you think are so fancy, will be destroyed. The best laid plans don't work out for Shebna. He will leave his project unfinished, and his tomb will be empty. You will not be buried here. You will be buried, if buried at all, out in the wilderness. You are, verse 18, a disgrace to those you serve. And join me in verse 19. The Lord is going to take away your job. And actually, if you read the rest of Isaiah, chapter 36 and 37, his job was taken away. He was made into an assistant, demoted. I will give your job, he says, to Eliakim. God will give your official robes and your authority to his servant, Eliakim. He's a servant, not like you, full of himself. But it's God's servant, Eliakim, son of Hilkiah. Eliakim, whose name means whom God establishes, will be like a father. Here's our Father's Day message on Shebna and Eliakim. Eliakim will be like a father to the people of Jerusalem and to the royal family of Judah. I will give my authority to a servant. God has a replacement ready, one who's already serving, not serving himself, but serving the Lord, serving others. Eliakim will be like a father. He'll have the same authority you have, but he will use it legitimately to serve others, not himself. We see the same kind of language used in Genesis 45 when Joseph is called like a father to Pharaoh. He takes care of all of Pharaoh's affairs. In Job 29, Job is called a father to the poor. In 1 Timothy chapter 1, Paul is called a father to Timothy. He's not literally his father, but he's one who takes responsibility, one who watches over and serves others. And that's what being a father is all about. Isaiah 22:21. The Lord will put Eliakim in charge of the key that belongs to King David's family. No one will be able to unlock what he locks. No one will be able to lock what he unlocks. God will give access to the secrets and treasures of the palace to that man. Privilege and authority is found in keys. This is the verse, I believe, that Jesus has in mind when he hands the keys to Peter and the apostles in Matthew chapter 16. I give you the keys. What you lock, no one will be able to unlock. What you unlock, no one will be able to lock. Later in Revelation chapter 3, when Jesus dictates his letter to the church at Philadelphia, chapter 3, verse 7, he says, I am the one who has the keys, the one that when I lock it, you can't unlock it. When I unlock it, you can't lock it. This is the verse that Jesus is referring to. Then he turns again to Shebna in verse 23. The Lord will make him, Eliakim, not you, as firm in his position as a tent peg. You're getting kicked out, but he's not. He's a tent peg hammered in the ground. And Eliakim will bring honor to his family. His children and his relatives will be supported by him. That's what a father does. Like pans hanging from a peg on the wall. Shebna, you're on your way out. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. But he will be entrenched. He's not going anywhere. He will bring stability and bring honor. He will provide support. That's what dads do, right? Dad is the local ATM. Dad can have $5. Dad is also the one who gives answers. Dad, how come I can't get the engine to start? Or how does this work? Verse 25. That peg is fastened firmly now, but someday it will be shaken loose and fall down. Eliakim? Then everything that was hanging on it will be destroyed. That is what the Lord all-powerful. He starts and ends by reminding us God's the one who's all-powerful. That's what the Lord all-powerful has promised. It's a puzzling verse 25. Does that mean that Eliakim will blow it, have a fall himself? Some see it as predictive, or maybe a warning. But I see this as a realistic warning that's there for all leaders, good and bad. Every president comes to an end of their term. Every pastor comes to an end of their term. Every father must pass the baton on to his children and no longer be the one they can depend on. So the question is, who are you hanging on to? Who are you depending on? This is a warning to fathers, to leaders, If we give in and we fail, everything will fall and be destroyed. It's a warning to children and followers not to follow people, but to follow the Lord. But it's also a message for fathers and pastors and leaders that our job is always to prepare our family, our children, our church, our business for the time when we are no longer there. Here we have in Isaiah 22 a powerful story of two men with power. One who uses it illegitimately and one who uses it to serve others. So first I'd like to look at Shebna and learn what real manpower is not. Shebna reminds us that it's not how strong you are, how many answer to you, how much you have, how many know your name. Real power is found in serving and not in serving yourself. First, real manpower is not found in a name or a title. It's not using power for your own reputation. Shebna used his power, used his position to gain a name for himself, to help his own reputation. Here he is building a burial place, even when he's not sick or old, in the wrong place, a place for royalty. But the Lord interrupts his feverish tomb building in order to tell him, hey, wait a minute, you're not all that. We naturally resist the idea that this life is all that there is. Even those who don't believe in an afterlife want to be remembered. We long for immortality. We want to be remembered. We want our name on trophies and on records and pyramids. But we live under the illusion that we'll be remembered forever. That's not immortality. If you are remembered, it might be for a generation or two. But the time will come soon when no one will remember who you were. So if you pursue immortality, what do you achieve? A tombstone in a long-forgotten cemetery? How about having your name written in the book of life? How about living your life investing and helping others? Shebna, how about spending your life serving your kids, your family, the people of Jerusalem? A wise man in Washington, D.C., when he became sick and had to resign his office in the Senate, said, you know what, I've learned that when it came down to the end, no one ever wished that they spent more time at the office. Especially busy dads, we need to remember, no one ever at the end of their life wished they spent more time at the office. The great poet James Taylor said, shower the people you love with love. What are you going to do when you come to the end of your life and you're all by yourself alone? No, don't spend it all on yourself. Shower the people you love with love. It's not in a name or position, and it's not in a car or an office. Actually, it's not using power for your own interests to serve yourself. It's not being remembered. It's not serving yourself. It's not doing what you want to do. Here's a guy in verse 18 who's spending all this time on working on his fleet of cars, his chariots, making sure that he's got a nice window office. He wants to do what he wants. He wants to have a blast while he lasts. He wants to pour his life into things. He wants to love things and use people rather than use things and love people. But here, Shebna is a reminder to us that that's not what being a real man is all about. It's not in what you have. It's not in the power. It's not in serving yourself. And it's also not in bluster. In verse 18, it's not about applause and fanfare, using your power to bring attention to yourself. Actually, instead of bringing himself fame, he's making himself a disgrace, verse 18 says. Real manpower is not measured by steroid-induced home runs or family neglecting millions. It's not what you accomplish, but what you help others accomplish. I remember when I was in seminary thinking, you know what? Taking tests in seminary is really counterproductive. If the teacher tests me on what I remember, that doesn't really prepare me for the ministry. You see, I went to seminary after already being a pastor for 10 years, and so I knew in seminary what I really needed. And what I needed was not to learn all the stuff, but to be able to teach the stuff to others so that they could do it. And I thought, you know what a great seminary grading system would be, that I have to learn, the student has to learn the material, teach it to someone else, and someone else ought to have to take the test for me. Oh, if you do that, that's called cheating. No, that's called ministry. And it's not my job to know it all. It's my job to teach it to you so that you can live the Christian life not only on Monday through Saturday, but after I'm dead and gone. That's what ministry is all about. It is passing along what you've learned to others. Yes, Shebna, the workaholic, the arrogant, selfish guy who used his position to serve himself, he's a lesson to all of us about what real manpower is not. It's not a name or a title, using your power for your own reputation. It's not a car or an office, using your power for your own interest. It's not an applause and fanfare, using your power to bring attention to yourself. That's easy, what it's not. But Isaiah reminds us also here that all of us can be replaced. In verses 19 and 20, the Lord's going to take away your job. Eventually, all of us will have to give up our job. Real man is not proud as if he can't be replaced. A real man recognizes that he will be replaced. And he works, though, so he's hard to replace. A real man is hard to replace. I have to work every day knowing that I can be replaced. I missed you for the past 2 weeks and the world didn't come to an end. I know you can find a better preacher somewhere. I know you can find a better leader somewhere. But my job is to be the best that I can be and to make sure that you can't find anybody who loves you more than I do. We all can be and we all will be replaced, and that's something that Shebna reminds us all of. But let's look now at Eliakim and see what real manpower is. We've seen what it's not. Shebna has reminded us that it's not how many know your name, it's not how much you have, it's not how many serve you, it's not how much you can lift, for how long. Let's see what it is from Eliakim. Verse 19, God will give Shebna's official robes and authority to Eliakim. Maybe we can learn something from the uniform, the robes that he would have, the official uniform. This is what real manpower is. It's using power for service. You know, I was traveling last week, flying 4 times, and one of the times at the airport I was behind a man in a military uniform. And you know what I said, thank you for your service. You know, a uniform doesn't mean I'm more important than anyone else. A uniform means I'm here to serve. And so when we see a military person, we want to honor them for their service to us. When we see a nurse in his or her uniform, when we see someone, maybe it's a police officer, maybe it's a guard or a janitor, but a uniform is associated with service. And Jesus, his uniform, you know what Jesus' uniform was? It was a towel and a basin. Because when no one else would get down and serve by washing feet, Jesus took off his robes, put on the service towel, and washed feet. And I had to remind myself, that's my uniform, not a collar, not a suit. My uniform is being a servant of all. Here, a pastor is one not who has the biggest staff and most people who do his bidding. A successful pastor is one who serves the most people. As Jesus said in Mark chapter 10, verse 45, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve and to give my life a ransom for many. If anyone ever deserved to be served, it was Jesus, right? But Jesus came to serve. And every father who's doing a good job, every husband who's doing a good job knows that it's not about being served. Maybe on Father's Day a little bit. But every other day it's about serving. And your uniform, whatever it is, man, woman, child, your uniform over the next few weeks, maybe it's a mechanic and you got your name sewed on the jacket. That's your uniform to serve. That's what a real man does. That's how you measure manpower. I want you to pull out of your pocket my object lesson for the day. Sometimes I put object lessons in the bulletin or I have it handed out, but today's object lesson you brought with you. It's your keys. Pull out your keys. Men, women, everyone, maybe some kids don't have keys. But pull out your object lesson this morning. Next thing we're going to look at, a real man not only is concerned with uniform and service, but a real man knows power is responsibility. Notice it. You got the keys? In verse 21, he says, the Lord will put Eliakim in charge of the key that belonged to King David's family. You know, the key, let me see, let me hear it. Every one of the keys, you got more than one? Every one of the keys that you have shows some responsibility that you have. Someone thinks that you ought to have access to that office building, where it's your home. It means ownership, and you're responsible for that home. It's my car, it's my office, it's my home. Each one represents some power that you have, but that power also means responsibility. The Lord gives the keys to Eliakim, takes them from Shebna because he's not worthy, he's not responsible. When I hear that phrase, who's responsible for this? I can't help but go back to my childhood and a brilliant idea I had one day. I noticed the glass top on our coffee table in the living room. We had this great big coffee table with a great big piece of glass over it. And I thought it would be really neat to take my new Super Ball, put it underneath the glass, and see what it would look like if I smashed the Super Ball out. Well, I didn't realize that Super Balls don't smash very far, or that glass doesn't withstand that kind of pressure. So when I put the Super Ball under the glass, and I pushed on the glass to smash the Super Bowl, of course you know what happened. The glass cracked all the way across. Now we had two pieces of glass on top of our table. And when my dad got home, he said, who's responsible for this? Well, I was too afraid to say anything, but my smart aleck younger brother said, Dad, you're responsible. You're going to be the one to pay for it. So we both got punished. But the truth is, I was responsible. I broke it. I wasn't responsible enough to pay for it because I didn't have any money. But the truth is, as Uncle Ben said to Peter Parker, Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So let me hear him again. That represents some responsibility that God has given to you. And every time you use those keys this week to open up something, remember, this is my home. I'm responsible for those inside this home. This is my office. I'm responsible to see that the work is done. This is my car. This is God's car that He's entrusted to me. And I'm responsible. That's what real service is. Now join me in verse 23. And we'll look at the next object lesson, which is actually a seat. It says, Eliakim, verse 23, will bring honor to his family. Actually, the words are literally, he will become a glorious throne to his father's house. A throne. One of the powerful symbols of a dad is often dad's chair. Maybe dad's chair is a lazy boy. Maybe it's a throne in the bathroom. Maybe it's a lazy boy in front of the TV. But actually, the seat is a powerful symbol of stability. A father, a leader, a man who has real godly power uses that power to bring stability. In a good home where there's a good dad, when somebody says, Dad's home, that's a time for rejoicing, not a time for fear and cowardice. Many, many children today grow up in a home where it's never said Dad's home because Dad never comes home. The point is, if we are good leaders, especially good fathers, then we will bring honor to our family. We will bring stability, like a seat brings stability to us. To be honest with you, on Father's Day, it's hard for me to remember my dad being there much. My dad was out of town all the time. Not an absentee dad, but he worked as a truck driver, so I didn't see him very much. He wasn't there for my concerts or my plays. He wasn't there very often. But at least I had a dad some of the time. Almost half of the children in America today grow up without a dad. And that is an epidemic that brings a lot of pain and misery, not only to moms, but to children. So men, I remind you, bring stability to the home that God has given you. One other image we want to use, and that's in verses 24 and 25, it's that stake that he talks about. His children and relatives will be supported by him like pans hanging from a peg on the wall. Stake. I wonder who you are supported by. I have a problem in my closet. I have a lot of shirts hung up, a lot of pants hung up, but I don't want to hang up my jeans every night. I wear them nearly every day, so I don't want to hang up jeans. I don't want to fold them up. So I want to hang them somewhere. I don't want to just throw them on the floor. But every time I try to put them on a peg, the peg falls down. I had one of those vacuum ones, and I tried all kinds of tape, but it just wouldn't work. Finally, I had to get one that kind of came on a screw, and I screwed it into the wood, and that finally held it up. That's the kind of stability that a man's supposed to bring. Uses his power to influence those in his home, in his community, to be fastened firmly, to be something on which others can depend. It is my job to prepare my children for my demise. It is my job, I recognize, as your pastor, to prepare you for your next pastor, your next 5 pastors. Are we firmly men fastened so that others can depend on us? Today, many men are hammered in the wrong way, but not like a stake in the ground that gives stability to a wife, to a mother, and the children. Eliakim was a man of real power, who was, for us, a type of Christ. Remember that Christ used the words that were associated with Eliakim in Revelation chapter 3, verse 7. Jesus shows up in Revelation and says to the church of Philadelphia, I'm the one who has the keys. I'm the one who has the keys to death and to hell. I'm the one who locks and no one unlocks. The only one locks and no one locks. Eliakim is a picture to us of Christ. For Christ's uniform was one of service. Christ has the keys, but he is responsible. Christ has the seat at the right hand of the Father, but brings stability to the world. Christ is the one whose word on which you can stake your life, and his influence will never go away. Looking at Jesus, especially when he walked the earth 2,000 years ago, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you would not know that he was the most powerful man in the world, the most powerful man in history. Jesus was so weak in the end that he couldn't even lift up his own cross. Do you remember the story? They had to get someone else to carry his cross. But Jesus, when he was lifted up on the cross, lifted up the whole world. Jesus is the most powerful in the world. He's willing to lift you up. Jesus did not have millions. Jesus famously said, I don't even have a place to lay my head. He didn't leave behind a great legacy when it comes to finances. But he owned the cattle on 1,000 hills, and he is the one who created the world. Jesus' fame was pretty big in Jerusalem and in Israel, but 2 countries over, they never heard of him. But of course you know that now, 2,000 years later, his name is the most famous in history. And one day, Philippians tells us, every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord, Jehovah God, to the glory of God the Father. I just want to get on it a little bit early. Yes, Jesus reminds us of what a real man is. Jesus reminds us that it's not how many know your name, but actually it's how many names you know. Learn a name this week. No one doesn't love to hear their name. It's not how much you have, it's how much you give. You can't take it with you, but what you give, you do. You send it on ahead. It's not how much you serve. It's not how many serve you, actually. It's how many you serve. That's the measure of greatness. And men, it's not how much you can lift, but how many you lift and how long. That's what Jesus teaches us. Eliakim points us to Jesus. Jesus was the one who the wind and the sea obeyed. Here's a real man, not one who was lifted up on the shoulders of those who won the World Series or the Super Bowl, one who was lifted up on a cross. But Jesus is the one who teaches us what a real man is. Jesus, in the end, Colossians 2:14, he has taken sin out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. There's something secure, something stable. Jesus takes and nails your sins and mine to the Lord. So what is a real man? It's one who serves. I want to share with you one of my favorite stories. When I was in school, there was a young man named Paul in seminary. He tells the story where he learned more than he learned in any class in seminary compared to the ministry. He was packing his stuff into his new car for the end of the fall break for Christmas vacation. He had a new car, but he was not well-to-do. He was a poor seminary student who really couldn't afford much other than ramen noodles to eat. But his brother was well-to-do and had purchased for him a brand new red sports car. So he's coming down the steps out of his inner city apartment to load the last box in and to pull away when he noticed a young street urchin hovering dangerously close to his car. His first reaction was to tell him to get away, don't scratch the car. But then he thought better, and he was really proud of his car. And so he smiled and said, "It's a beautiful car, isn't it? It's mine, you know." And the little boy said, "Wow, mister, you must be rich." He said, "Actually, I'm not. My brother gave it to me as a gift." The little boy's mouth dropped open and he said, "Wow, I wish I..." And Paul just knew what he was going to say next. "I wish I had a brother like that." That's what you and I would probably say. "I wish I had a brother like that," but he didn't. He shocked Paul by saying, "I wish I could be a brother like that." Paul was floored. And so he offered the young man a ride. "Would you like to ride the car?" They took him around the block, and he was impressing him with all the features in the car and how fast the car could go. And I know kids aren't supposed to take rides from strangers, but he was just really impressed. And he figured nobody really cared about this little boy anyway. He said, "Where can I drop you off?" He said, "Would you mind dropping me off right by my front porch?" And Paul said, "I know what he wants. He wants to show off what he's been driving in. He can ride a great big fancy car." He got the kid wrong twice. He pulled up to the house and he said, "Wait right here, mister." He knew what he wanted. He wanted to go get someone. No one noticed him pull up in the fancy red sports car. He disappeared up the little steps and into the apartment, and then he saw the little boy coming down the steps, carrying his little crippled brother. And he said, "See, I told you, that's the kind of car someday I hope to get for you." So Paul offered a ride to both little boys, and as they drove around looking at the pretty Christmas lights, it sparkled extra bright because he was looking through tears in his eyes and a great big frog in his throat. And Paul says that he learned more from that little boy, more than he learned in all of his seminary classes combined. Boy, I wish I could be a brother like that. Brothers, that's the message for us today. Not, "I wish someone would take care of me. Where's my back rub? Where's my dinner?" No, we want to be like Jesus. I want to be a brother like that. I want to be a father like that. How about you? Let's pray. Lord God, thank you for our fathers on earth, especially those that loved you and served you and taught us the way that we should go. Lord, help us, whether we had good fathers or not. Help us to be the kind of fathers and mothers, the kind of influencers that Jesus was for us. Lord, thank you for coming and dying on the cross for us. And thank you that when you were lifted up to die on the cross, you lifted our sins up, nailed them to your tree. Lord, if there's one here today who's never trusted in Christ as their Savior, I pray that today, especially dads, if they've never prayed before to receive Christ, I pray that today they'd give their heart to you. Surrender for real manliness. Real masculinity is not in conquering, but in surrendering to the one who is Lord of all. Your head's still bowed if you've never prayed to receive Christ. If you're not sure you're a Christian, or you're sure that you're not. Would you surrender your heart to the Lord this morning on Father's Day? Would you make a gift to the Heavenly Father of your heart today? Say something like this in your heart to the Lord and mean it. "Lord, I know I'm a sinner. I know I deserve death and hell for my sin against you. But I thank you for loving me anyway and sending Jesus to die on the cross for my sins. Jesus, I believe he died in my place. I can't save myself, so I ask you to forgive my sins. I believe the blood of Jesus' cross. Lord, make me your child. Forgive my sins. Make me what you want me to be." Your head's still bowed. If you prayed that prayer this morning, I'd love to pray with you. I'd love to pray for you. Would you meet me here at this altar? Would you shake my hand at the door and say, "Pastor, I prayed that prayer with you this morning, and I meant it." Please pray for me. Lord, I pray for those who need Jesus. I pray for those of us who are your children. And I pray that you would help us to be servants like Eliakim, like Jesus, like that little boy. In Jesus' name we pray.